To begin, we would like to acknowledge that this service is being held by a community that gathers on the stolen traditional lands of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, Pawtucket, and Wampanoag people. We pay respect to elders who lost their lives in the colonization of this land, and we recognize that these indigenous tribes are still today facing violations of sovereignty, territory, and water. We also give thanks for the earth we walk upon, the waters, the life-giving plants, and all the earth's creatures, as well as the winds, sun, moon, and stars. We recognize this is just a first step in moving towards right relationship with Native peoples and healing of the earth. Good morning. And welcome to First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton, FPC to our members and friends, a welcoming spiritual community. My name is Neil Saunders, and I serve as chair of the worship committee. If this is your first time with us, we welcome you. Our minister and staff are listed on the front of the order of service. Please feel free to ask me or any of these people for more information about the church and its programs after the service, or by email or through chat if you're online. We also invite you to check out our webpage for news and information, and you can also sign up there for our newsletter and email alerts. We ask that people remain masked in our sanctuary, except in the balcony and in church offices and RE spaces, but the rest of our building is now mask optional. Please check with people you're talking to about their comfort level, and please make sure the air filters are on when you congregate in any room. If you would like an assisted listening device, please ask one of our ushers. Our assisted listening devices are actually small radios that work throughout the building so that you can listen to the service from another space for any reason. After the service, please join us for coffee and conversation in our fellowship hall, which is one level down at the other end of our building, to my left. Or if you're online, you can join us in a breakout room. I'll draw your attention to the announcements in our order of service, as well as information about how to sign up for our email lists and newsletter. Our minister, Reverend Cindy Landrum, is taking a well-earned break today, so I'm delighted to welcome to our pulpit our guest minister, Reverend Patricia Hatch. She is the minister of the Unitarian Congregation of Mendon and Uxbridge. She is the minister of, I've already said that. Reverend Patricia also serves as a UU community minister with a specialization in rites of passage ceremonies. She has a Master of Divinity degree from Boston University, and she enjoys poetry, nature, and inspiration of all kinds. One more thing, as a special part of her meditation later in the service, Reverend Patricia will move around the church playing her singing bowl. In the extremely rare case that this could bother someone with tinnitus, they are welcome to step out at that time. And now let us come together in the spirit of worship.
Thank you, Neil. And welcome again to the First Parish Church of Stowe and Acton. I'm so glad that each of you can be here this morning. It is a joy to be back in the pulpit here. I preached here one other time 10.5 years ago. So it is so good to be back. And now we will have the chalice lighting. I invite Neil to come forward and light the chalice as I say these words by Marjorie Montgomery. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and mysteries of this great gift. Thank you. And now I invite you to join with me in saying the responsive reading that is printed in the order of service. I will say the part in regular font, and I invite us all to say the parts in italics together. This is actually a poem by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Amen. I now invite you to rise in body or spirit as we sing our opening hymn, number 347 in the gray hymnal, Gather the Spirit, number 347.
Please remain standing for the covenant and affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
may be seated. It is now time in this service to have a message for all ages, for the young and the young at heart. Today's story is called The Black Dot by an anonymous writer. One day, a teacher entered her classroom and announced a surprise test. Hearing this, all the students got worried and started thinking of what might come up in the test. The teacher distributed the question paper with the front side facing down. After handing over the papers to all the students, she asked them to turn the page and start the test. To everyone's surprise, there was no question on the paper. There was just a black dot in the center of the page. Everyone was confused and looked at the teacher, hoping that she would explain. She told the students, "I want you to write a few lines about what you see on the paper." All the students were confused, but since they didn't have a choice, they started writing. Once everyone was through with the test, the teacher collected all the papers and started reading out each answer in front of the whole class. Without an exception, all the students had written about the black dot, mentioning the dot's position, the size, the color of the ink. After reading out the answers, the teacher addressed the students and said, "None of you will be graded on this test. I just wanted you to ponder over something. All of you wrote about the black dot in the middle of the page. No one wrote about the white, empty part of the paper." The same thing happens in our lives, too. We often focus on the dark spots. We may have many reasons to celebrate: our family, friends, perhaps our health, our school or work, the sunshine, the fall leaves, the spring flowers, words of kindness that are shared with us, even from strangers. So many things to celebrate. However, we limit our horizons by focusing on the dark spots, our disappointments, our fears, our frustrations, our anxieties, things that bother us, the people who wronged us, all the things that might go wrong in our lives. In our day-to-day lives, we might take the good things for granted, but focus our energy on insignificant dot-like failures and disappointments. So the teacher finished, though these dark spots are often quite small compared to the good things, sometimes we let them perturb our minds and steal our peace. So let's take our eyes away from the black dots in our lives and focus on all the bright things that surround us, within us, among us, around us. I now invite Marissa to come forward and share the lantern.
I believe that's it. So for all the rest of the joys and sorrows in this community, we hold them in our hearts and share with those who are celebrating and or grieving.
Thank you, Ingrid. I now invite you into a time of prayer and meditation. We will start with a moment of silence. And after that, I will share some words. Then I will walk around and play my singing bowl as we continue in that spirit of prayer and meditation. The singing bowl makes a meditative sound, and you'll be able to hear it from different angles as you either lift up your hearts or you settle in deeply as you listen to the sound together in community. After that, we will sing the hymn Spirit of Life together, number 123. We will sing that in a meditative way. We will remain seated as we sing it. So you can, if you need the number, it's 123. You can look it up ahead so you won't have to flip through the hymnal at that time. So let us start with a brief moment of silence. May we lift up our hearts and hold our fellow parishioners and friends and neighbors in these great joys we've heard, and in the deep sorrows we have heard, and in the concerns and in everything in between. May we lift up our hearts. Joys are often multiplied when they're shared in community, and sorrows are often lightened when they are shared. So we think of our friends and neighbors and family members and acquaintances in their joys and in their griefs. Amen. The meditation words I brought this morning are by Kimberly Byer Nelson, and it's actually a poem. It is called, "This is How We Are Called." This is how we are called. In the hours before the birds stream airborne with chiming voice, a silent breath rests in the pines and upholds the surface of the lake as if it were a fragile bubble held in the very hands of God. And I think this is how we are called, to cup our hands and hold this peace, even when the sirens begin, even when sorrow cries out, old and gnarled, even when words grow fangs and rend. Cupped hands, gently open, supporting peace, like the golden hollow of a singing bowl, like the towering rim of mountains, cradling this slumbering and mist-drenched valley. Cupped hands, gently open, supporting peace. Peace. Please remain seated as we sing Spirit of Life, number 123. This reading is called The Guest House by Rumi, translated by Coleman Barks. This being human is a guest house. Every moment a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. They may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
This is the point in our service where we share our gifts. This month's beneficiary is our very own Supporting Asylum Seekers Task Force. There are many ways to make your contributions, all of which are listed in today's order of service and also in the chat for those online. As always, your generous support is appreciated.
When expecting brings to birth hope that love, not the hatred all around us. We see God here by our side, walking our way. We see God here by our side, walking our way. When our spirits, like a chalice, brim with gladness, when our voices, full and clear, sing out the truth, when our longings, free from envy, seek the humble, we see God here by our side, walking our way. We see God here by our side, walking our way. When the goodness poured from heaven fills our dwellings, when the nations work to change war into peace, when the stranger is accepted as our neighbor, we see God here by our side, walking our way. We see God here by our side, walking our way.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you. The power and perils of positivity. The idea for this sermon actually germinated in my mind for a long time. Positivity changed my life. As a young adult, I discovered that I could choose to become aware of my self-talk and choose to create more positive self-talk in my mind. And our words follow our thoughts, so the more I could choose positive self-talk in my mind, the more positive I became, and the more ripples that made in my life. Good, positive ripples. I set myself on a happier path where I could create more of what I wanted in my life. And I could share this with others. In fact, my very first sermon, more than 16 years ago, at the First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church in Canton, Massachusetts, my first sermon was entitled, Saying Yes to Your Heart. Positivity is a good gift and tool. And like any tool, it has its uses, and it also has things it should not be used for. As the wise writer of Ecclesiastes in the Hebrew scriptures wrote, for everything there is a season, and a time for every purpose under heaven. About a dozen years ago, I started officiating funerals and memorial services. I found that I had a gift and a passion for officiating funerals and memorial services. And along the way, as I talked with many, many families, I heard about all the things that people say to grieving folks that can cause more harm than good. When people are grieving, they don't want to be cheered up and encouraged to look on the bright side. In fact, they'd be entirely unable to do so. They probably need to live in a season of grief and loss for a time, and eventually, in their own way, in their own time, they will enter a new season with the loss still present, but with a different perspective. It can settle into a deeper place in their heart. And this can only happen on their own timeline, just like we can't force a flower bud to open before it's ready. Puritans who settled in Massachusetts buried a lot of loved ones. They lost many children, they lost spouses, they lost neighbors and friends and fellow parishioners, as well as the native people, of course, lost so many people. These early people who lived in the same areas that we live experienced great griefs and little consolation. I was mentioning the Puritans especially because I've been trying to figure out how Americans moved from the gloomy doomsday mindset of the Puritans to the sunny, positive thinking movement in the 20th century. It was vastly different. The Puritans believed the Calvinist theology that God only chooses some people, the elect, to go to heaven. The other people are doomed to go to hell. It didn't matter how many good deeds they did, what their characters were, what they believed. This Calvinist view believed that God would have some people, the select few, go to heaven, and all the rest would be doomed for all eternity. And no one could ever know in this life which group you were in. If someone tried their best to live a good life and thought for sure that they would be one of the ones going to heaven, then they were prideful, and most certainly they would not be one of the chosen. Living a good and pious life was an outward sign that might mean that you were one of the children, but there were no guarantees. Everyone scrutinized themselves all the time with the fear that they might not be one of the elect. And their lives here were hard, very hard. So with such a hard life here and no assurance of a good afterlife, it was a dismal way to live. Shall we say, a really, really negative way to live. So how did we get from this mindset to the prevalent positive gospel that still we find in today's society? How to Succeed books have been available since before the American Revolution. Ben Franklin's Poor Richard's Almanac was first published in 1732. In the 19th century, the process to get ahead was to develop character traits such as integrity and perseverance. Horatio Alger, who was born in 1832, influenced many with his young adult novels about impoverished boys and their rise from rags to riches through good works. And of course, our very own Unitarian ancestor of faith, Ralph Waldo Emerson, promoted self-reliance. Phineas Parkhurst Quimby was the father of the New Thought movement in the 1800s. He believed all illness originated in the mind and was caused by misguided beliefs. Mary Baker Eddy, one of his followers, continued on this way of thinking. She promoted the idea that the cause of disease was rooted in the mind, and even proposed that illness does not exist at all and is merely a delusion. She founded Christian Science. William James, the first American psychologist, became a believer in New Thought and the Mind Cure movement. Author Whitney Goodman notes that while William James agreed that New Thought was helping to counteract the depressive nature of Calvinism and paving the way for a more positive way of thinking and living, he also was aware that this new religion completely sidestepped the reality of tragedy. There was trouble in paradise. However, in the 20th century, the new success ethic of positive thinking became even more popular. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill became the positive thinking Bible in the 1930s. And then, a little later in the 20th century, Norman Vincent Peale's book, The Power of Positive Thinking, outsold every nonfiction book except the Bible in the 1950s. Whether through healing oneself or growing one's wealth or improving one's mind in other ways, the change your mind, change your life philosophy was becoming widely accepted. By the late first decade of this century, positive thinking was pervasive in American culture. It was promoted on Oprah. In 2006, the runaway bestseller, The Secret, was published. Positive thinking had also found its way into the theology of some of America's most successful evangelical preachers. It had even entered the academy in the form of positive psychology. Tens of thousands of motivational speakers, authors, life coaches, and self-help gurus promote positive thinking in today's world. So where does that leave us? Without a doubt, positive thinking, positive belief, and positive action can make our lives better, can make a world of difference in our lives and in the people's lives we impact. Psychologists agree that positive feelings like gratitude, contentment, and self-confidence can enhance our lives and improve our health and our well-being, as well as our emotional states. Positive thinking, however, is not a magic wand that will provide us with all our wishes. Positive thinking can help us manifest things in our lives by the process of us choosing to change our minds and change our hearts. We can manifest things by changing our lives and our minds and our hearts. However, everything that happens to us is not necessarily something that we manifested. Some things happen because of other people's actions or by chance. Positive thinking can help us find things to celebrate in life, like reminding us of the empty page instead of focusing on the dark dots in our lives. Positivity is so helpful. For instance, if we tell ourselves that we are stupid, we're doing nothing to increase our smarts, and we're bringing ourselves down. However, if we tell ourselves, remind ourselves that we are strong and smart and capable, that primes us to become more strong, more smart, and more capable. It does not make us instantly these things. It primes the pump, so to speak. A rich life is not a life of constant cheerfulness. A rich life has seasons and nuances. A rich life also includes sadness, disappointment, anger, loss, and grief. Toxic positivity is putting on a forced positivity that attempts to dismiss or deny unpleasant emotions. When we are in these states of sadness, anger, disappointment, or grief, we need to experience them. We need to observe what we're thinking. We need to feel how it feels in our bodies. We need to accept that that's what's happening with us right now, and not try to act as if these negative emotions and states were not there. And actually, that will help you move through the negative states if you can accept them first. And then they might pass a little sooner, like clouds passing in the sky, instead of putting up a lot of resistance, which might create more negativity and might make them stay longer. A 2012 study found that it might be better for our overall happiness to feel emotions like anger at appropriate times, rather than just trying to seek happiness no matter what the situation is. I shared Rumi's poem with you this morning, The Guest House. Rumi invites us to welcome whatever emotional states we find ourselves in, to welcome them and to even greet them at the door, laughing. Likewise, if someone else is sad or grieving, we might be tempted to offer a platitude in some attempt to try to say something comforting, we may feel helpless in the face of another's grief and struggle to find something to say. Most people intend well, but most of us don't know what to say in the face of another's grief. A few of the most unhelpful things to say to a grieving person are things like, God needed another angel, or everything happens for a reason, or to a couple who has lost a child, at least you have other children. We struggle to know what to say. Basically, when we say things like I just mentioned, we're telling them to cheer up and get over with it, get on with their lives. And they can't cheer up if they're in deep grief, even if they wanted to. Instead, the best things to say are the simplest. I care. I'm sorry. I'm here. When can I bring you dinner? I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. I'm really, really sorry. I'm here for you. I love you. Your presence is the biggest gift you can give grieving people. Look them in the eye, give them a hug, say the name of their loved one. They want to hear the name of their loved one who's passed. They want to know that others remember them. Your presence, your support, your caring is the biggest gift. And that's the most positive gift of all. Actually, in some deep sense, by letting ourselves and others feel and express our true feelings, this is a very positive act. How can that be? When we let ourselves and others feel our true feelings, even when they're unpleasant, even when they're really difficult, even if those feelings are full of grief and loss, we are affirming that we trust that we can handle those feelings, and we are affirming that we can be with another person in those feelings, and that we can eventually get out okay on the other side. It is an act of faith to acknowledge and feel, or feel with others, the sorrows of life. We are acknowledging that these sorrows are part of life, but not the entirety of life, even when they feel that way. Realistic optimism can help us be both positive and yet realistic about the obstacles you are facing or may face. For instance, if you were hopeful that the pandemic would end quickly in early 2020, you would have been very disappointed with each new surge. However, if you acknowledged that you didn't know when or how the pandemic would end, but you determined you would make the best of it, you would be enacting realistic hope. We can't control others, we can't control world situations, but we can control ourselves, and we can choose to make the best of any situation we find ourselves in. We can control our intentions, our thoughts, and our beliefs. We can control our words. We can control our actions. We can decide to make the best of whatever happens. That is realistic hope and the very most positive way to live. Using a combination of a generally positive outlook, coupled with a realistic optimism and a willingness to embrace all feelings, doing these things together will put you in a strong position to have a resilient and truly good life. What makes a good life for you? Do you consider yourself to be a positive person? Why or why not? Would you like to grow more realistic hope in your life? Would you like to add more acceptance of those things you can't control, while still nurturing more positivity in your life? What would you like to grow in your life today? I invite you to take this question with you and think about what you would like to grow in your life, because you can choose what you'd like to grow in your life. You are a co-creator of your life. What a wonderful power and privilege and responsibility is yours. Poet Laura Martin writes about the impulse to say yes to life with all that is happening in the universe, known and unknown, with risk and with courage and with wonder. Laura writes, "In the beginning, there was wonder. There was the wonder, the awe, and the courage. In the beginning, there was the arc of light, that space for someone to whisper, yes, yes. In the beginning, there was risk and release, poetry and prophecy. There was color and movement, the first revolution of stars, the impulse for the good. And now this has come all the way to you. This has come all the way to you and to the space held by your reply, held by the reply you live. May the reply we live be a resounding yes. Amen, and blessed be." I now invite you to join with me in the closing hymn, which is number 128 in the gray hymnal, "For All That Is Our Life." Let us sing these words with intention and joy together in community. You may rise in body or spirit for number 128, the benediction and the closing song. Which we are called to use to build a common joy. Go with hope. Go with love. Go in peace until we are together again. Amen.